Hello, and welcome to FACT's webinar, Brain Injury, Disabilities in Agriculture. Our guest presenter is Dr. Yvette Ruiz. I'm Samantha Gasson, FACT's Humane Farming Program Manager, and I will be moderating this session. Thank you for joining us. Before we dive right in, let me take a minute or two to do a few quick introductions. Food Animal Concerns Trust, or FACT, is a national nonprofit organization headquartered in Illinois that works to ensure that all food-producing animals are raised in a humane and healthy manner. We accomplish this by supporting humane farmers through our humane farming program, promoting policies that make food from animals safe and healthy to eat through our Safe and Healthy Foods program, and generally help consumers make informed food choices. Our mentorship program and our Fund to Farmer grants are currently open and accepting applications. Please visit our website at foodanimalconcerns.org to learn more about all of our amazing farmer and consumer services. At this time, I'm very pleased to introduce our esteemed presenter, Yvette Ruiz. It is Ruiz, right?
Yes, it is.
All right. Dr. Yvette Ruiz is the founder of Healing by Growing, HBG Farms, and a full-time farmer, trainer, consultant, and coach. She is also a brain injury survivor and an advocate for a more inviting and accepting food system society. Prior to establishing Healing by Growing, she worked as a clinician at Yale New Haven Healthcare Systems and as an executive at the New York Healthcare System and the National American Red Cross. Dr. Ruiz currently acts as an accessibility consultant coach to various USDA and NRCS Southeast offices, the National Young Farmers Network, and various ag organizations, farms, and higher education institutions, seeking to be more accommodating, accessible, and inclusive of farmers with all disabilities. We are very lucky to have Yvette with us today to share her experiences and expertise. So without further ado, I will turn the floor over to you, Yvette. Please take it away.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you for everyone for being here today. My apologies that my computer screen is showing like some neon funky colors. And so the picture that you see that Sam didn't realize he was going to put that beautiful picture up there. I do not look like that today. Welcome to all. It's a pleasure to be here today. I would like to share my screen and get started. While I do those technical stuff, it's going to take me a couple minutes. Who would like to share on the chat what is the weather like where you're at today? $80 and sunny. Oh my Lord. Okay. 40 and sunny, 78 and sunny and 65. Okay. Beautiful and 65. Here is 64 and the sun just came out. It's been raining. Thank you all for participating on that. I'm going to minimize myself and get us started. Well, again, thank you all for being here today. I'm hoping that we all can learn from one another today as this presentation unfolds, and we could have an engaged, an interactive session. My screen is not moving forward, so just give me 1 second. It is frozen, so my apologies. I'm going to stop sharing and try to share again. There we go.
So you're not sharing currently, Yvette?
Oh, okay, no problem. That will explain that. Thank you. Hold on, I'm sharing on my end, but not on your end. So my apologies.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's stop that again. And let's start here.
There we go.
Are you seeing the whole deck or just
the whole deck?
All right, 1 second, please. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Okay, there we go. Thank you so much for letting me know that. I appreciate that. Okay. Now let's see if we could advance this time. It's still not letting me advance. Sam, could you, oh, there we go. I was able to do it. Okay. So everyone should be able to see welcome and introductions in front of your screen. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about brain injury. I'm going to share a little bit about myself. We're going to go through a couple of polls and discussions and talk a little bit about the connections between TBI and farming. A little bit about us before we dive in. We are a green therapeutic-based retreat and educational center. Our focus is around brain injury and trauma recovery through farming. The services that we provide, main focus is on 3 areas. The first bucket is a no-cost traumatic brain injury and trauma community programming. That is free seasonal food for homebound and delivery. That is free retreat space and healing space. That is educational spaces around and teaching and classes how to become a farmer. That is also hanging out with the therapeutic animals and just being in place and trying to heal while in nature. The second bucket is ag consulting and coaching with the focus on accessibility training. And the last bucket is community farm experiences that is open to the community from pre-K all the way to college students. Bucket number 1 is all free services, no insurance, no monetary requirements for anyone who identifies as a trauma survivor or a brain injury survivor. The other buckets are a fee for service. A little bit about my story. I put a link on the bottom here because I want to make this about all of you and not about my story. But since we did decide to share that I was a brain injury survivor, I'll share just minimum. And for those of you who are interested in learning more, you could click on the link there on your own time and learn a little bit more about us. Or you could follow us on our website. All of our social media links are there. And you could also learn more about my story there as well. In the summer of 2020, while getting ready to deploy to respond to a national disaster with the National American Red Cross for Hurricane Isaias, I was getting ready to deploy and getting together with my grandkids saying goodbye. I slipped and I fell and hit my head against 3 trees, causing a brain injury. At the moment, I laughed it off and I just wiped the blood on my head and just kept on moving. I had people to place in shelters, and I had people that were in the pathway of a major hurricane. And my primary goal at that time was not my head, but how do I move forward? But after feeling ill shortly after and sluttering and getting dizzy, and my grandson saying to me, "You don't look good and you sound not like yourself," the trip took a detour and I ended up in the emergency room with a brain injury. And that's where my life changed forever. And that's how Healing by Growing was birthed. In the darkest of my time, where I lost hope the most, I found hope in that tragedy. I went from a very dark space where I wanted to commit suicide to choosing to live and have life over what was happening to me. It's been a long 3 years. I am still in therapy. I have had every therapy that you probably can imagine. But as a result, the good thing that has come out of this is helping others now with a similar story and advocating for those with disabilities in agriculture. At this time, we're going to have a poll in front of you, and we're just going to give you a couple of minutes to answer the 3 questions that have popped up on your screen, please.
Yvette, just let me know when you want me to end the poll and share the results.
Sure. So I'm just going to go over each of the questions to make sure that for someone who may have a vision impairment, that they can follow along. And so I'm going to read question number 1. Have you ever hit your head during everyday activities? Yes, no, or unsure. Question number 2. If yes, has it interrupted your life in any way? Yes, no, unsure. I have never hit my head. Question number 3. Do you know personally of anyone who has suffered a brain injury? Yes, no, or unsure. And question number 4. Do you think it is important or relevant for farmers to learn about brain injury? Yes, no, or unsure. And Sam, you can close the poll at this time, and we could review the answers. Wow. We'll start with question number 1. Have you ever hit your head during everyday activities? 95% of you out of 20, we have 19 that said yes. I don't know about you all, but to me, that is a significantly high number. And Sam, will we be able to share the poll results with folks after the event?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I can certainly do that.
that will be amazing. Thank you. I'm going to pause for a minute to just simply ask a follow-up question. Can we see people's raising their hands? Sam.
No,
Okay, can we see an emoji if people put it on the chat?
absolutely. So
Perfect. Okay, so if you were surprised to see this big number show up on number 1, put an emoji on the chat. If you were surprised by seeing a number at 95%, put an emoji on the chat. Okay. All right, so a couple of you. All right, let's go to number 2. If yes, has this interrupted your life in any way? And 50% of you said yes. 35 said no. 2 said unsure. And 1 person said they never have hit their head. Number 3. Do you know personally of anyone who has suffered a brain injury? Out of 20, 18 individuals said yes. We could see the remaining for the others. And number 4, do you think it's important? And we got a 20 out of 20. Thank you all so much for participating on that poll. And we're going to move on. Just keep those numbers in mind as we go through the session, in case other questions pop up as a result. And I'm trying to move my slide again, and I apologize, it's a little bit slow. What is a TBI? So a TBI usually results from a fall, a hit on the head, something that falls on your head. You hit your head on a chicken coop, or you're milking the cow and the cow kicks back at you. It could be a bullet. It could be a piece of your skull that is that got fractured somehow. There are different types of brain injury. There are mild brain injuries and there are more serious brain injuries. And just because you fall in that spectrum, it doesn't mean that one person is going to heal quicker than others. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that there's some people that have a diagnosis for a severe traumatic brain injury and heal in weeks. While there might be somebody with a mild traumatic injury and it takes them years to heal. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that because it depends on the bruising of the brain, and if there's any tissue that was torn, if there's any bleeding or any physical damage that happened to the brain as a result. And we don't always know the complications right away. So that's a little bit about what a TBI is, and TBI stands for traumatic brain injury. Causes of a traumatic brain injury. And so here in front of you, we have the reasons and the different causes that are part of a brain injury. Can you think of any others? Put them in the chat. So we have falls, motor vehicle accidents, explosives, like veterans, blunt trauma, assault, like in domestic violence or in a fight, farming. What else? Can anyone add a couple more to the chat? What could be another potential cause for a traumatic brain injury as a farmer or someone in agriculture? And Sam, I can't see the chat, so if someone is typing, let me know.
All right, we've got some good ones in here. Livestock can swing their head and knock you out. I've actually had that happen to myself before. Stroke, Q fever, COVID, Lyme, etc.
Yes.
Failed suicide attempt, sports, horses, tractor accident,
Yes.
kicked by an animal, machine tractor failure,
Yes.
wind blowing items, and somebody else, lots of tractors. I think that's probably
Yes.
that's been one that's a lot of us have had to deal with. Logging, a tree falling.
Okay. So as you can see that in agriculture, there's a whole bunch of ways that anyone could get hurt. And most traumatic brain injuries happen in the elderly communities. It also happens in sports, in the sports arenas and sports places or sports activities. And over 80% are related in farming are related to tractors, tractor rollovers or slipping or falling. But there's a significant other amount that falls in the categories that we discussed. Now we're going to go to our next poll. Now that we have a little bit more of information and how the causes are and how it can happen in agriculture. I'm going to invite everyone to review this for a couple minutes. Then again, I'm going to pause and read it. Question number 1. Is there a relationship between brain injury, disabilities, and agriculture? And this is just based on your own knowledge. Question number 2. Do you know ways on how to protect yourself from injury or re-injury of a brain injury? Yes or no? Do you know some of the symptoms? That's number 3. Yes or no? I'm just going to give everyone about 45 more seconds, and then Sam, you can close it.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So for our question number 1 about the relationship, we have 24 out of 24. Do you know ways on how to protect yourself? We have about 14 out of 24, 58%. We have 42% that doesn't know how to protect themselves. We'll talk a little bit about that. And number 3, do you know the symptoms? And so 20 out of 24 individuals said that they knew the symptoms. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll spend a little time on each of these as we progress. Let's go ahead and move forward. Sorry, my computer is taking a little bit between each slide. Okay. So for poll number 1, is there a relationship between brain injury, disabilities, and agriculture? So according to PubMed, and that is the scientific publication in medicine, people working in agriculture have some of the highest rates of brain and Parkinson's disease, 46% greater odds of having dementia, and increased rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide. These risks may be associated with central nervous system dysfunction. For example, agriculturalists having been found to experience a higher risk of impaired neurobehavior, neuromotor, neurocognitive performances. And these all are related to brain injury. A lot of these are also related to chemicals, to toxins, and to other brain injury and other brain injury trauma, also including strokes, heart attacks, and things of that nature. Number 2, do you know ways on how to protect yourself? And we're going to have a little discussion here. You're going to use the chat for a little bit of this. And this is about injury prevention or re-injury. So for those people that were not aware, when you have a brain injury of any type, if you happen to have a second or a third brain injury, each time you have a brain injury, the condition gets worse and the symptoms get worse. And it's like a reset. And sometimes you can start right from the beginning and like you had one for the first time, and sometimes it just escalates and it's a lot worse. What are some of the things that we can use for protecting ourselves? So if you are already someone who has survived a brain injury, the advice from medical personnel and clinicians is always to wear a helmet. A lot of people say, that is weird. I am not going to milk the cow or ride the horse or go feed the chickens, and I'm not going to walk around with a helmet because I'm not in sports. And I have to be honest and say that the doctor told me to wear a helmet, and I didn't listen. So it's hard to walk around with this heavy thing, and they have lighter ones and smaller ones, but the really ones that really protect you are really hardcore and they're heavy. And it's difficult, especially in the summer, to move around, and when you're feeding the chickens or the rabbits or the horses, whatever, it becomes difficult. But had I listened to the doctors, I would have prevented a second brain injury that I had a year after my first brain injury, when I was fixing my chicken coop roof and it fell on my head. And so really, really important to recognize and know that when you already have a brain injury, and I'm starting there with the re-injury, because a lot of people in the questions prior to the session talked about being already survivors and knowing people with brain injuries. So I wanted to start there to say that it sets you back. And unfortunately, if you were making progress like I was with my speech and with my vision and with my walking, having had a second brain injury without the first one being healed yet, really did a significant number on me and set me back majorly. So what do I do if I don't want to wear a helmet? I try to be mindful of my environment. I use what is called a 3-point system, touch. It's a touch 3-point system. That means that I am constantly aware of what the item is that I'm working with is. For example, let's go with my chicken coop. If I am working on my chicken coop roof, I'm going to have a hand on the top of the roof. I'm going to have another hand on the side of the roof. And then going to move that top hand and find another point that if I happen to slip or anything, I know where I'm at. I know an idea of where everything is, where I could duck, where I could hide. I'm also want to be aware of my light and my environment around me. Sometimes we have chores in the middle of the night when an animal is crying or birthing or there's an issue, and we just run out without realizing what may be in the ground. And so being mindful that when we have an injury already and we're survivors of a brain injury, being mindful of our footing, our lighting, our point system, touching different things so that you just know the surroundings, where are the sharp ends, where are the blunt ends. What else do you think could be a way to prevent and protect yourself from injury? Start thinking about that while I talk about the first injury. And the first injury, if you've never had a brain injury, is not much different, right? We're not telling you to go wear a helmet because you have to, but we will definitely recommend it because it is something important. People are not aware that, a quick slip and a fall could cause major damage. And so being mindful, using helmets, using goggles, because sometimes you're working and if something goes through your eye into your head, that can be something that can create a puncture or injury to your brain, that sometimes we may take that for granted. What else? What else do you think in the chat? If Sam, if you could let me know if there's any responses. What else can you do to protect yourself from brain injury? And again, you're protecting your head, your neck area and your sort of that whole space. If you could see my hands, I'm touching my whole face, go from the top to the sides and the back, and even to the back of my neck, protecting all of that. How else can you protect yourself?
Right, so we've got actually quite a few responses here. Diane says, slowing down and being more mindful of what you are doing from moment to moment. It's hard practice to do though. Joy says, a helmet saved my life, the last TBI, horse related. I will always wear a helmet on the horse. At this point, I am incredibly protective of my head day to day. I avoid unnecessary risks and establish a safety first environment all over my farm. Susan says, learning to properly tie off and secure equipment, lock out broken equipment, don't do tasks alone, have a second person to help, use proper livestock handling equipment for the type of livestock. Carrie says, use the seatbelt in your tractor ATV to prevent ejection. Shannon says sunglasses, hearing protection, etc. Joy says farms are notorious for tripping hazards. Need to make sure you remedy the tripping hazards. And the last one is from Steve, remove twine, horses, etc. that can grab your foot.
Wow.
Good one, guys. These are great, aren't they?
I'm done, Sam. I think that they got it. they got it all. I'm done.
They're too smart. Too smart.
Yeah, this is awesome. I love it. This is great. Amazing. See? You all know the knowledge. The knowledge is in the room. Is how do we share that knowledge and talk about this? Because we often talk about brain injury in sports activities or maybe with the elderly, but we don't always talk about in agriculture, in our everyday farming tasks and days that is so important. Great list of information. So everybody should be well prepared and take a trip to Walmart or Target after this call. Do you know of the symptoms, which was our poll question number 3? I see the smiley faces. I do see those floating around. I like those. Thank you, whoever's sending those this way. The symptoms are a bit tricky, right? Because for some people, they're very mild and some people don't have any for a while. And for some, they're really traumatic. So here we'll talk about some of them. And these are the effects of a traumatic brain injury according to Johns Hopkins. And we're going to divide it into 3 categories. The first one will be physical, and that is limited eyesight and awareness, maybe unable to see certain parts of the eye, be aware of certain surroundings. For me, I'll talk about me. I have a lot of issues with my vision 3 years later, and it gets worse every month. Despite my vision and my vestibular therapy and the glasses that they change every 3 months, I have a limit on screens for 2 hours. If not, I get insane pain on my eyeballs. Like if you take your thumbs and you put them each in front of your eyes and you press really hard, I don't want you to hurt yourself, but you get the idea. That pain and that pressure is agonizing and is horrible. So you have people experience a lot of vision difficulties, and people also have issues with their neck. If most people that hurt their brain or their head get whiplash. And so most people have a dual issue, head and neck injury. Some have head, neck, and back injury. So being very mindful that if you do hurt your head, it can impact other body parts, your arms and your legs and your spine. Some people become paralyzed. Some people experience numbing and tingling. So the left side of my body gets numb quite often, and I have to stop whatever I'm doing, and I can't drive far places because when it gets numb, I fall because I get disoriented. And so this happens to a lot of people, not just myself. So knowing and being aware of where I'm at, who I can call, do I have my phone with me all the time? So if I fall inside the coop and nobody's around, at least I could call 911. So being mindful. Some of the cognitive things that people experience are limited memory, very difficult to learn new tasks or remember certain things. Attention is difficult to concentrate or pay attention for long periods of time, especially in a very busy environment or environment that is moving around a lot or constantly evolving and changing. very poor impulse control, really hard sometimes to be able to self-monitor or to even know your limitations, because you always, if you're the kind of person that push and push and push because you think that you're not doing enough after the brain injury, then you push yourself 3 times as hard, and that just is not good. For some people like myself, I also have speech impairment. So when I have a cognitive overload and I'm really tired and I haven't rested, my speech, I have to start searching for words and I start slurring. And it's really hard for me to be able to speak and to remember things. And I get very disoriented very, very quickly. So I have to be able to know cognitively how much I can handle. For example, if I have a farm experience day and I have 25 students from the university here and I'm doing a training about composting, and they all start talking and hanging out and have music going on and they're moving 1,000 miles like I speak, what happens is that cognitively I have to shut down, I have to close and get a timeout, and I sometimes have to put my hands and couple them over my eyes because I won't be able to do anything. I have to take a deep breath and I have to self-regulate. But it's a little bit more hard to self-regulate when you are in overload. So cognitively, there's a lot of impacts. And a lot of people, they're similar to Lyme disease and they're similar to other health conditions. So it's important to sort of figure out and seek professional help. Always seek professional help, and self-diagnosing is okay, I believe personally, because you are your own self-advocate. You know yourself and your body better than any doctor. Had I not been my own self-advocate, I would probably not been as ahead as I am today. I went from a 20-year college education to 4th grade level in a matter of seconds, and it's taken me 3 years just to start coming around. So you're your own advocate, but we still need tests and medical guidance to be able to diagnose it so that people can get the right treatment that they need. And lastly, we have behavioral and emotional, which consists of being impulsive, aggressive, easily frustrated. And one thing I did not put here, which I wanted to leave up for discussion, is mental illness, mental health. In individuals with brain injury are at a much higher risk of suicidal ideation than many other groups. So mental health combined with a brain injury is a mixture for disaster if you don't have the right resources, both clinically and non-clinically. So being mindful, and sometimes you may not even notice, but your loved ones or the people around you or your farm workers or your consumers or your customers, or you may, if you are a community provider, you may see a farmer act a little bit different, get frustrated a little bit quicker, get emotional quicker. All these things are part of the behavior and the emotional part of this injury. And this is just a few. There's a lot more. There's nausea and vomiting, there's GI problems, there's issues with regulating temperature, you're either too hot or too cold. There's a tons of other things, but this is just an idea. So if any of you ever hit your head, have not sought out for medical care, and have ever experienced any of these, my advice would be to consider seeing a doctor. Or if you know of someone and you notice any of these red flags, it's really important. And this is a training that I do that usually takes 4 hours or a full day. So I'm shortening things up, and I'm not saying everything I would like to say because I see that we have like 33, we have a lot of, we may have a lot of questions that came in beforehand, and I want to give space for that. So I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about brain injury and trauma resources, okay? Many of you have probably heard about the National Agreeability Project, and I wanted to put the number here for those of you that have not heard about it. If you are a veteran, if you are a farmer, if you are a farmer with a disability, you are able to call the National Agreeability Project and find out if they fund an agreeability project in your state, and if they fund the agreeability project in your particular state, they will provide you a wealth of resources They have amazing resources, a huge budget, and great personnel. And it's state funded specific from my personal experience. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. From my own personal experience, I live in Connecticut. And in Connecticut, there's not an agribility project office or staff. So when I called them for help and guidance, when I didn't know what to do and I was losing it, literally, they could not help me. So then I called my neighboring states who had it. But then when I called them, they said they couldn't help me because the funding is specific to their state and they're not allowed to provide resources and use their budget to help someone who's out of state. So unless I moved to one of those states that were funded by agribility, these programs could not help me. So because I wasn't a veteran and it wasn't on a state where I was funded, unfortunately, National Agribility Project did not work for me. However, I work very closely with them, and we are working on how maybe perhaps we can provide advocacy and coaching and consulting and outsourcing for services. But I can't answer that for them. So if you have specific questions about veteran programs, veteran support system, assistive technology, any of that, and you live on a funded state, and for that, you go under agribility.com and you put in your state and you find out if they are in your state, and then you'll give you a resources of what is offered in your state. It's state by state and it's different.
Right. Lori Lee would like to know if you know what states have the agribility programs, or how can she find that out?
That's what I was just saying. If you go to agribility.com, you find out they have the listing there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Because the list changes because, again, it's based on funding. So you have to go to agribility.com and you go in there on their webpage, and then they'll have the listing, and not only have the listing, they'll also have the link to that state and that state specific services. Okay. Most states have what's called Easter Seals, and Easter Seals works with a lot of disability, a lot of mental illness, a lot of physical impairments, all things disabilities, seen and unseen, right? And because of brain injury is oftentimes not seen. So you look okay, people pursue you as you being fine, but you're really not. So they perceive you as that, sorry. And so Easter Seals is the number that you can call. The first number, 312-726-6200, or you can leave a voice message. For example, for me, it's very hard to be on screens and to be typing. And so I do a lot of voice messaging and a lot of audio texting. That's what works for me. So Easter Seal is the only program that works with disabilities and people with limitations that offers both of those. So you could go on their website, which I have listed here, or you could call or leave a voice, and someone will call you back to let you know what services specifically to agriculture and farming and disabilities is offered in your state. Okay. Then we have Healing by Growing Farms, and that is us, and that is our office number. So we work nationally, and we are a resource hub. And so when people can't get services anywhere else, what we do is we try to help them with a referral system and outsource them. So if somebody calls me and says, well, agribility is not on my state and I don't know what to do and I need help with this and that, or they're going through a mental health crisis, we connect them to 211, which is information throughout the state that have all kinds of resources. We connect them to the National Suicide Hotline, and we connect them to other services based on their state. And we do that. That's one of the services that we provide. Now, I selected Missouri Agribility because it's one of my favorites. They have a great website. So for those of you that want to see what a state with agribility funding can do, if you click on this next link that says Missouri Agribility, if you hit there, they have specific services for agriculture, farming, and brain injury. And these are for Missouri. And if you are not from there and you have questions about your state and you did not find it on the first point I said, agribility.com, then you could go on their page and find their local number and contact them, and maybe they could give you a better resource. Because unfortunately, we don't have access to their agreeability list, when it changes, when it doesn't change it, who's on, who's not, what services they provide, because that is, you have to be part of that agreeability network. And unfortunately, Connecticut, where I live, is not part of that. And the last number is the National Suicide Hotline, which is a really, really key and important number to have handy, because we never know how brain injury is going to impact someone. And it's always great to have that first aid or that first line of contact or that person that you can call. And if all that it doesn't come through fruition, calling 988 or texting 988 and just writing help, you will have a licensed counselor be able to provide resources and support to you specific to your state. And not only for brain injuries, I want to be mindful to say that sometimes the caregivers of survivors of brain injury and the family members go through dark times in the process while seeing their loved ones suffer and struggle, and they need services as well. So I wanted to be mindful and share that. I see a lot of things on the chassis number, so I don't know if it's moving or what, but at this time, I would like to take questions or comments. Samantha, what do you think? We have about, according to my time, 16 minutes.
Yeah, that's go ahead. We can just do questions. And while you guys are formulating your questions, why don't I go ahead and do our end of webinar poll? And so if you wouldn't mind doing that, this really does help us when it comes to getting our webinars funded. It's good for us to be able to do our reporting and all of that kind of stuff. And it really does make a difference for us so that we can keep offering these webinars that we do for free. Anyway, so if you wouldn't mind doing that, and then we'll go ahead. Let me see. I don't see any questions in the Q&A right now, but if you guys want to go ahead, I think you've covered a lot of stuff. I put a bunch of links in the chat, but I will also be sending those out when I send the follow-up email. Sure. Yeah, so Yvette, do you want me to read out some of the comments people have made while we wait for some questions?
Yes, and I also want to allow enough time for your poll. And if people need me to read the poll I don't know if there's anybody with limitations and screens and disabilities, and I don't mind reading it if that's helpful for anyone.
Oh, sure. Would you like to do that?
Sure. So, end of webinar poll, question number 1. Do you feel more knowledgeable on this topic after participating in this session? Yes, no, or maybe. Question number 2. Do you plan to use any of the knowledge or skills gained in this webinar to make changes on your farm? Yes, no, or maybe. And question number 3. How many livestock or poultry will be affected by this newfound knowledge? And then you have from 1 to over 5,000.
I know that seems like a really weird question, but that's one of the ways one of our funders really likes to know how many animals are being affected by what we're teaching here. So, all right, I'm gonna let that go for just a few more minutes.
Yeah, I would love to see. Well, I would love to see the results.
You want to see the results? Okay. Let me see. I'm going to let it go just for a minute more. Sure. So going back to some of the ways that you could protect yourself. Oh, actually, there's somebody in the Q&A. How do you feel CTE in farm injury and farm injury compare in farm?
So I'm not an expert, so I could only speak based on the guests and the patients that come here and the interactions I have had. And from what I understand, again, from my own personal and professional experience, they're very similar in many ways, but also very, very unique, that needs specific care or resources or guidance in many ways as well.
Right. We also have another question. Any resources or thoughts to keep things organized for those of us with short-term memory loss? I have post-it notes everywhere and whiteboards. Does anyone else deal with this? So what are your
Yes.
thoughts on that, Yvette?
Yes, I deal with that all the time. And what helps me the most, and then we could open it up for others who may want to share also, because I'm not the only expert in the room. There's many of us. I use a lot. I leave myself a lot of memo notes on my phone. I also outside of memo notes, one of the things that I do is I leave myself reminders all the time. I bought 3 Alexas. So I have Alexa in my kitchen, Alexa in my living room, and Alexa upstairs that I could hear her outside by the barn. And I let her, if I need to take a note, Alexa, can you remind me to do that? Alexa, can you add that? Alexa, can you call? So she is, or he, whatever, space you want to put her in, you could fluctuate her. I use Alexa. I use audio messages, audio notes. I on my calendar, I put notes specific of what I did today and how much I did it, because if not, I forget. So those are some ways. I have a whole bunch, but I want to be conscious of time. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, we've got quite a few suggestions. Photograph everything, voice messages. Lori says that she sets an alarm on her phone frequently, and then she views the calendar on her phone also. And an iPad with chores and complete and times to act was another suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, photographs are so key, and they're definitely great. Oh my God, yes.
All right, so we don't have any more questions. Okay. Joy keeps spiral bound notebooks and spiral bound paper day runners, no electronics. She writes everything down, all sorts of stuff. And she keeps those notebooks, and she has years of them. Old school, but screens. And then she goes, ick.
That's awesome.
So I'm going to unshare your screen, Yvette.
Okay, no problem.
And I'm going to go ahead and share mine.
Oh, I had a closing thought. May I put that one up real quick?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry about that. I've already taken you off, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Is it off?
I think you. No, you're not. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, hold on. Just wanted to end with this real quick. Oh boy, it's not moving. Why don't you want to move? So I wanted just to say thank you for this opportunity and for allowing me to share part of my story with you today and some other resources. And I want to remind all of us that if agriculture goes wrong, nothing else will have a chance to be right. And by agriculture going wrong, there could be so many things. That could be climate change, that could be carbon monoxide, that could be so. But if something goes wrong with us, the farmers, the ones that grow the food every day, could you imagine the disaster of people? So let's be mindful and take care of ourselves and those around us and our environment. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Yvette. That was absolutely wonderful. I really am so grateful to you, and so grateful you had suggested this webinar, and I'm so glad you did. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share. We've got a few things coming up. We've got a few housekeeping items. A recording of this webinar and the slides will be available in just probably by tomorrow morning for sure. These documents will be archived on a website, and I will email them to you as well, in addition to all of the other links that Yvette kindly shared. We also have some really great webinars coming up the rest of this autumn into the beginning of winter, and I will send links to all of those as well. A sincere thank you, Yvette. It's always a pleasure. I love your company, and I love chatting with you. We've done quite a few things together now, gone to DC together, done a bunch of stuff. It's lots of fun. And I also want to thank everybody. This was I know I always say this is a fantastic audience, but it really was absolutely fabulous audience, and I really appreciate you guys attending, and I look forward to connecting with you guys again soon. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.